So welcome. I hope you have been enjoying the conference so far. I would really like to extend a big thank you to Ivar Tallo, who has been carrying the weight of the whole preparation. I can see that he's already at the brink of exhaustion, but I hope he will manage for the last 2 days. Priit Alamäe is my name, and originally I am from the private sector. I'm running the largest software company in the Baltics here, but I'm a big fan of, obviously, Estonia, and even a bigger fan of the Estonian government. And today I would like to share my views on what is the Estonian government and how does it work from the perspective of an ordinary citizen. So first, e-government is all about reducing the bureaucracy. However, it's also about the attitudes. When you think about the whole idea of government, it's about processes, it's about bureaucracy, it's about steps, it's about defined measures. And in software development, we have a saying which says crap in, crap out, meaning that if the input into a process is not quality, you will not get a quality output. So very often, the automation of processes does not actually mean that the processes are changed, meaning that we take the same processes which have been there in place for the last 50 years and we just try to put it into an IT system. That usually doesn't work. But now, let's try to think out of the box, and let's imagine that all the different countries are actually companies. And we, as citizens, we at the same time, we are the shareholders of such company. We vote every year, or every 4 years, or every 5 years, on the General Assembly, and we choose the management of a company. And as there is movement of labor, especially in the European Union, we can go and pick and choose the best company, so to say, where we want to pay our taxes. At the same time, we also the clients of that company. So it's a huge utility company which is providing services from healthcare to what have you, planning, etc. So we are the shareholders of such company, and also we are the clients of such company. And if, let's say, a country would be a company, what would be, as shareholders and clients, expect from such company? Let's see if I'm a shareholder of a country. What do I want to see? I want to see professional management. That's why we go and vote every 4 years, 5 years. Now, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. IT cannot really help there. The only thing that IT can do is just enable more people to actually go and choose. We want to see the steady and sustainable growth of our share value, cost control, profitability. Okay, there already IT can help, especially in the cost control. We want to see good corporate governance, we want to see transparency, we don't want to see any wastage, we don't want to see corruption. IT can help there. And we want to see shareholder involvement in the decision making. Once again, IT can help there. Now, a customer, what do I want to get? Variety of services, but I have access, as simple access as possible, to as much services as possible. I want to feel that the services are provided to me in a quality manner. I want them to be affordable, accessible, but most importantly, when I'm a customer, I want to feel that I'm appreciated, that the company that I'm buying services from actually understands me, knows what I need, knows what I want, and I don't have to go and, if I go to a different department, I have to start giving all the basics again. So they should know what I want. They should know my habits. They should know my wishes. Google example, if you have, sorry, not Google, Amazon example, if you have bought these books, maybe you would like to buy these as well. So this is what I would like to get from my government as well. It's personalized customer service. And as we know from ancient times, the earth is flat and is standing on 3 elephants. And trying to define the e-government, the 3 elephants is information, but all the information regarding public sector activities and services should be available on the internet. That's kind of a first stage. Secondly, that the public sector services are available through the internet, the relevant one. It doesn't, at one point in time there comes a question whether it makes sense to automate more, or do we have enough? So that's why I'm saying relevant. And, but the actual internal communication between the public sector organizations is paperless. They can act without paper and interact without paper. So what can the government do for me as a citizen, as a customer, as a shareholder, so to say? Obviously, real-time access, that's what I would like to get. If I need something, I can get it right then and there. And the second one is the supermarket principle. Now, why are the, so to say, mom and pop shops dying away? Because people are lazy and they like to go to one place and get everything that they need. And to be that one place near their home, usually. And I will speak more later about the usage of different channels and what the government can do and what the government in Estonia case has specifically done to provide such channels. Participation, all data that I'm using from a government side, it should be relevant and it should be personalized. In a lot of cases you can find lots of data on the different websites, but is it relevant for me? Not really. So I want to have the information, not the data. And there's a big difference. And different studies say that roughly 85% of all transactions are local, especially when dealing with the government. Intuitive user interface. We're very happy with, I still am very happy with my Nokia phone. And Nokia has always been the world leader in providing the most sophisticated equipment. They have so many bells and whistles, but it takes days and days to actually understand what your phone is doing. And then Mr. Jobs suddenly came out and said, listen, this is not what people want. They just want to, take two fingers and make the picture bigger and smaller. And when you look at the iPhone, it's not that sophisticated actually. It doesn't, I mean, the battery life, sorry, is crap. There are not so many functions, but people still buying it because just of the user interface. And as much as I have looked at different government services, same in Estonia, so often they are so complicated that you need a manual just to use them. However, it doesn't have to be like that. So thinking of the user experience, I think for the spread of e-government is one of the most important things, because we cannot assume that we are all engineers. Secondly, self-service, it should have a financial motivation element. I will later speak about the tax example. But anyway, people should either save lots of time by doing it or should save lots of money. And that will drive them into it. And for government, it's very easy to provide such motivation because anyway, the automation saves money. Now, building the IT system will make the life of a government cheaper. And you can just share that benefit with your fellow customers. And finally, the access to the services should be made easy. Before we had the ID card in Estonia, pretty much everybody was already using the internet banks. And the internet banks, they had spent considerable time and cost to build up their own security systems so that people could actually go and use the internet banks. So the first internet bank in Estonia was launched, I think, 93 or 94, one of these years. And what the government decided at one point in time is that, okay, let's go back to the supermarket principle. If most of the population is already going to the internet banks, and the internet bank security is good enough to let people manage their money online. And most of the fraud is about money on the internet. It's not about, should I order some kind of a paper from the government. It's about money. So the decision was very simple that if the security systems are good enough for the banks to let people manage their money online, it's good enough for us as a government. So the government started putting their services kind of inside the internet banks, meaning that you would go, you would log on, and then once you're already authenticated, you will be passed on to the other environment where the services are. So try to make the access as simple as possible. Now, of course, with the spread of the ID cards, and the banks are not stupid, obviously, so they are trying to push more and more people to use the ID card so that they can get rid of very expensive authorization authentication systems. So now it's turning the other way. And that's why the banks, at least in Estonia, have been the heaviest supporters of the ID card. Because the ID card makes their life now much easier and less expensive. And finally, the trust, accountability and trust. Now, dealing with the government, often it's, you put something in a black hole, it's a black box, and something starts happening inside there. And as a citizen, I don't really know. I have sent a mail, I have sent an email, and then it's suddenly dark. And will I get an answer back in 10 days, 30 days? I have no idea. So what we have been trying to do here is try to give as much transparency to the users in terms of where their requests are. Because every process, for example, if we're talking about the complex processes like land planning or, for example, land planning, there are 9 to 10 different steps that need to happen. You put your application in for the detailed plan, then somebody needs to review it, then the neighbors can say what they think about it, then there is one committee, the other committee, third committee, when you're putting your construction, etc. So these are all the steps, and I think for people sometimes it's okay that it takes time, as long as they understand where exactly the request is. So it's also integrating with the back office, meaning that very often the e-services are about, you fill in a form somewhere on the web, and then it goes as an email to a civil servant, who then puts it into another system, and once something is done, he sends another email back, etc. So trying to build the same system for both for the external and internal users. And now, coming to the interesting part. So how do we actually live here? What are the services that we are using? How are we using these services? And why has something been built up the way it is? Looking outside, you will not imagine this, but this is actually a picture from Estonia. So our summers are hot, but they are, put it politely, very short. Our winters are very cold and very long. And most of the time, we have just bad skiing weather. And now, innovation is usually driven by some kind of need. And for us, we're lazy. And with this kind of weather, you don't really want to go out of the house. So you try to get as many things done from your own home. And people, when the weather outside is bad, they get grumpy. They are not happy about things. They lose motivation. So they start picking all the time. They start focusing on the bad things and forgetting about the good things very often. So when you see, usually when you see an Estonian talking, he forgets to speak about the good things in the country, and he really focuses about what is wrong. And that is also good in some cases, because it puts pressure on the government to do more and more. So for us, I think weather has been one of the big drivers of automation. Start with a life cycle. I want to get married. That we cannot do for an e-solution yet. Maybe we'll arrive there at one point in time. Now, most of the people already, I think, they meet on the internet somehow. But the marriage contract, we can already sign paperlessly. So if you want to marry somebody, you just put in your ID card or use your mobile ID, you sign a document, and voila, you're married. It's that easy. And then it will be just sent forward by the notary to all the relevant institutions. As you can see from this, we are not the most romantic nation on this earth. So, secondly, you have a child, and I went through this lately, and after the child is born, the least thing you want to do is to communicate with government authorities. That's the least thing on your mind. But you are sitting at home, it's warm and comfortable, and every once in a while you have some time to use the computer. So for us, registering a newborn can be done fully electronically. Because it used to be a process where I have to go, I think, if I remember correctly, to 3 or 4 different agencies, fill in some kind of papers, take a paper from somewhere, go to the next agency, get approval, and then. Now it's over the internet. And people love it. The next one is an interesting one. In our government portal, you can do a search for the names which are available, which are taken in Estonia. It sounds very simple. It sounds even a bit kind of stupid. But it is actually very popular. So here you can see, I have done a search for my surname, which says that there are 20 people called Alamäe in Estonia, and then my first name, which says that there are 3,600 people called Priit in Estonia. And if you want a child to have a unique name, well, you can all figure it out. Of course, there is a small privacy trigger in here, meaning that if there are less than 5 names existent, then it will just say that it's less than 5. It will not say 1 or 2. Once again, keep it simple and stupid. Very simple service, just a query into the population register. People use it heavily. And that's another motivation for people to actually go online and use the government portal. Because everybody would like to know, okay, if I name my child, what is the chance that there are going to be 3 other girls or boys with the same name in the class? Of course, sometimes it inspires people to give exceedingly stupid names to the children, just to be different. Next one. It's a parental leave benefit. That was introduced by the government, I think, about 3-4 years ago. And the idea is very simple, but if you are a mother, and as we are a Nordic country, or a father, you can stay at home for 18 months, and you will get 75% of your last salary, but not more than X for that amount. So we call it kind of a mother's salary, or father's salary. And before the automation, it used to be 7 paper documents that you have to fill and submit to all the different agencies. Now, after the automation, it's 18 different data requests from different systems. So it's a complex one. 5 information system, 18 data requests, all the different calculations, what was your salary, how much have you paid taxes, are you really qualified, etc. And in reality now, when you go online, the information is already pre-filled for you, and it takes about 3 minutes and a couple of mouse clicks. So once again, a very good motivation for the younger people to go online and start actually using it. Finding a nanny. Once again, went through it lately, not easy. And here the important part is that it's not important, really, whether the service in the end of the day is provided by the government or by some enthusiasts. This specific case is a mother of, I think, 3 children who had this problem many times, that you cannot find a nanny. So she just put up a very simple mashup on top of Google Earth and said, okay, let's start solving the problem. And now it's working. And on the basis of that, next thing, the child grows so fast, you don't want to go and buy the new stuff all the time. So she set up an auction place for used children clothes. Once again, very simple, very useful service. Going to school. Now we come to the next stage. I don't think E will ever replace going to school. Many people think that you can still learn from home. I don't personally believe in it. So still kids should go there. But what I believe, it's important to get the understanding between the teacher, we get the information flowing between the teacher, the parent, and the child. So what is actually happening in school? Is my child really attending the classes? What is he or she doing? So the e-school in Estonia, there is one application which is centrally hosted and which all the different schools are using. It's 70% of all schools are using and 95% of all students are using it. And some say that this is the most used application in Estonia. But 30% of the population is actually using it on a monthly basis. But when you come to think of it, it's basically the children, the teachers, and the parents. So it's a significant amount of the whole population. But who am I to talk about it? I would like to invite here Mrs. Meeri Sild, who is actually a teacher and who is using it on a daily basis. And I will let you hear it from the horse's mouth, so to say. So please.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Meeri Sild and I am a secondary school teacher, and I'm also a teacher trainer for training teachers to use ICT in our Tiger Foundation. I would like to speak about eSchool as I work with this application on a daily basis, and also how I as a parent feel about eSchool, or actually I would say felt about eSchool, because my son finished school and I can't follow his progress anymore, but I still remember it because it was only last year. Now, if I think about teaching tools and different teaching tools that we use in schools, then of course we use different software and internet, virtual learning environment or learning management systems. We use tools for project works, communication, and then there are so-called administrative tools. We have a separate database for secondary or comprehensive school teachers and students. It's called EHIS. Then we have a database for university students. It's called SAIS. And you can use SAIS to, for example, to enter a university in a very easy way. And then there is eSchool. So the name of eSchool might be a bit misleading, because a couple of years ago I carried out a survey for a presentation among people aged 25 to 50 and asked what do they know about eSchool. And many of them thought that it is some kind of system where you learn at home, never leave home, and it helps you to learn. On the contrary, eSchool is at this moment only an e-register. And in this e-register, inside this system, you can have different roles. I have myself experienced the role of a teacher, form or class teacher, being responsible for a class, as a form of a parent, and I have observed how an administrator and school management works with it. I have never been a student in eSchool, but I have seen my children use it. Now, when I enter eSchool, that is the picture of what it looks like. And on the right-hand corner, I can see my different roles. Today, my only role is to be a teacher in eSchool. Last year, there were 3 different roles: a teacher, form teacher, and a parent. And by switching these roles, I gathered information from different points of view. So when I enter eSchool, then if I were an administrator, so the role of the administrator is to administer the users and assign roles and create groups so that teachers can start using eSchool. So administrator has to approve teachers for starting to use the school. Parents, in order to get inside eSchool, they have to register themselves. They register, provide data about the children, their ID number, and then they are connected within eSchools. So if, for example, a parent would have 3 children in different schools, they would still get together in one eSchool system. So you do not have to log in different times. You log in once and see all your 3 children. Now, school management. For school management, I think eSchool is a very, very good tool, because school management can now have access to all student data. They can follow teachers' work. What I mean here is they can count how many lessons they have given, what are the marks, and so on. They can see the students' progress. They can find with one click problem students who is either being absent a lot or getting poor marks, and they can check the attendance. So it's a very, very easy system. For a teacher, what I do on a daily basis, I enter grades and lesson descriptions. I communicate with parents through eSchool, and I assign tests. And I just show you some screenshots how it works. Now, these are the courses I teach this year. Quite a lot, you think, yeah? The courses are pre-prepared now by the eSchool administrator, and what I do, I just click on a folder and open the class and enter data. When I enter data, well, on the left-hand side, there are names of students. I have removed them, yeah, for privacy reasons. But you can see, I can see an overview of all marks I have given to my students, and I can sort them. I can sort them in such a way that I click on the name control, that means tests, and on my view there are only test results. Or I can see only the term marks. So I can very easily move between different views. When a student enters eSchool, or a parent, he or she sees only the marks of a particular student. So no class view is available. Then lesson descriptions. When I have entered a class, I also enter a lesson description, and in this lesson description I will write what we did in the class and what are the home tasks. And this is really, really convenient, because now students have no excuse when they have been absent from school. They just enter eSchool, they see exactly what we have done, they see exactly what the home task has been. Of course, there are students who still claim that last evening they had a really bad internet problem, or sometimes they even say that parents forbid them from using internet for some reason. But still, they can have access to this data. Test planner. Well, before eSchool, you know how it worked. By our regulations at school, we can't have more than 2 tests in a class per day. We had a table in teacher's lounge on the wall, and then I had to run to see whether there is a spot available for planning my test or not, and write it in there. Now I just open eSchool, and when I see that I still can plan a test, then I enter it, and I can have the test on that day. Very convenient. Now, form teacher. I can't show you any more views of form teacher or screenshots about it. I'm really sorry, because this role ended for me last year. But what I used as a form teacher. As a form teacher, I could get access to all subjects and marks of my students. As a regular teacher, I see only the marks I give. I never see what they have got, for example, in biology or history or so on. But as a form teacher, I can have a look at everything, but I can't change anything. Then eSchool keeps for me a student database. And it is really, really easy because I do not have to fill in anything. Students and parents themselves fill in the data, and the data is gathered into one place. Then, as administrators, I could find problem students with one click. Just put a search, find problem students, and I get a list of students to whom I must pay more attention and maybe talk to. And of course I can prepare report cards from eSchool. And last year, it was, as I had a school leavers class, school leaving attendance reports or report cards, this has always been a huge work. It has taken several days because we did it manually. We entered marks one by one. But last year it was very easy because all the data, we could transfer them into EHIS. This is a secondary school database, and it took practically, well, maybe 20 minutes just to check that everything was okay. And I could also monitor parent activity. From eSchool, I could see whose parent and when used the system. So, and I could use this data, for example, if I saw that a student had problems, I could remind the parent that you could have a look what is happening in eSchool. So, as a parent and student can see grades and lesson descriptions, of course follow home tasks and see teachers' remarks. Well, as I used eSchool on a daily basis, then for me, as a parent, well, sometimes it was for me even annoying because, you know, a parent logs in whenever he or she wants and looks at the data. I log into eSchool at least 7 or 8 times a day, and each time I saw my son's results coming up, the latest marks he got. So I do think that these rows could be a bit more separated, so I would like to have a separate click to see my son's results and separate click to do my work, but somehow they were joined here. But I liked it. I felt as a better parent suddenly. I think I was the most active parent in the class, monitoring my son several times a day. So these are the main functionalities I spoke about once more, but I just skip it and speak about the benefits. So the benefits, one-time data entry. It's especially important for me as a teacher of English because, you know, the groups are split, our classes are split into 2 groups for teaching English. So when I had this paper-based register, I had to fill in the classes after the lessons because we had to share it between 2 groups, 2 teachers at the time in the class, and if you were late to the teacher's lounge, you never got it. So you had to do it at the end of the class. Then students' attendance information. That is very important, especially with problem students. And parents can log in, have a look whether a student has arrived to school or not, and contact school at once. So this is very useful. And of course, this up-to-date information, what is happening, how are students participating. Then I spoke about the simple data collection already, how easy it is to collect student data, to test, schedule tests, and of course get all different kinds of reports. There is one more thing I think should be connected with eSchool, and these are study materials. To make it into one integrated learning management system. There are some available already. Unfortunately, students have to pay to get hold of them, but hopefully the study materials side will develop as well. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Meeri. So Meeri will also be available for questions later at the end. But I would like to mention a couple of things here regarding eSchool. First of all, many times I have heard after a presentation a remark that, come on, but it's only a class register. I mean, where is all the e-learning and where is all the sexy stuff? My answer is always that first you need to learn to walk, and then you can learn to run. To get the people's buy-in, I said 95% of all students are in here. So once people get to understand, get to kind of be comfortable with the system, you can start adding more and more things on top. And let's say, as a parent, the first thing, this is the most important for me. How is my child doing at school? Is he or she attending the classes? And then only after that, when all the other things come. And another interesting, curious thing, this is actually owned by a private company. So this is not a government-owned system. So it's a good example of private-public partnership where there is, for such serious systems, the government actually trusts the private sector. And the third curious fact is that last year was the first time when many schools did not publish the final reports on paper anymore. So that the students who left school didn't get the paper report with the grades. They were just published in the system. And of course some parents were angry about it because they would like to feel the paper there, but that was a choice. So that's one example of private-public partnership. Now, let's talk a bit about the healthcare. Being sick is not a nice thing, and IT systems definitely cannot cure people. But what they can do, they can increase the quality of treatment, and they can make life easier for you when you happen to be sick. And I would like to invite here Mr. Taavi Einaste, a good colleague of mine, who will talk a bit more about the way that e-health is running in Estonia.
Testing. Apparently it works. Thank you, Priit, for inviting me. Health is one part of government, and it tends to be an increasingly expensive one. So therefore, e-health is an important thing that we look at when we're trying to control costs. But what are the goals of e-health? Most importantly, of course, we want to have better treatment outcomes, better quality of care. We also want to control the costs, because everybody knows that the people in general are getting older, and when they get older, they tend to be sick more often. We want to empower the patients, so that I think everybody knows this, that with the help of Wikipedia, many people are now diagnosing themselves and sometimes feel more smarter than the doctors. And it's both a good thing and a bad thing. But in general, what we want to do is we want to give patients more power in the system, more understanding. And then, as always, when we talk about e-government, large data collections, everything has to be secure. We have to know who, when, and to which data can access. Who are the stakeholders involved? Of course, the patient is in the center. The patient is the one that is most important, and for the good of the patient, the whole system, at least, is supposed to be working. We have the medical specialists who work in hospitals. We have the government, who usually, or at least in many European countries, pays for most of it. And then we have the employers and the insurers who also pay for some of it, and in general are very, let's say, interested in having healthy people. You can also move the circles around, and you can put somebody else in the center. And I think this is something that really defines the nature of an e-health system on a national level. The question is, who is really in the center? And we believe that the patient should always be in the center, that all the services, the databases, the e-health solutions should focus on the patient needs and what the patient wants. So when we talk about quality of care, this is the result that you want in the end when the guy comes out and says everything is okay, you will be okay, or your son or your mother or father will be okay. The first thing that we have to talk about is access to data. In order for the healthcare professionals to make qualified decisions, to make the right decisions for you, they need to have access to all the data that is available. And sometimes they need it very quickly. So you need to make sure that data is available, and you need to make sure that data is available when the doctors need it. Standardization helps, first of all, to make data available. Because without standardization, there is just a lot of data, and as Priit rightly said, what is important is actually information. So we need to have standardization in the healthcare system in order to make the system work. Standardization also helps in, let's say, defining quality control procedure for healthcare. Because historically, medicine has been treated as more art than science, and this is changing. Of course, we all watch Dr. House, and we know that a qualified individual or a very talented individual can make wild guesses in a hospital and treat one patient per hour or one patient per day, how it goes there. But in the real world, that really doesn't help. So what you need standardization of data and standardization of processes, because this is the only way in large-scale systems you can guarantee quality of care. When you have a lot of data available, what you can do is you can build automated decision support systems. This can be as simple as when you go to the doctor's office and the doctor or the medical system sees that you are a 35-year-old male who hasn't had a blood test done in the last couple of years. The system can kindly remind the treating physician, please order a blood work for this gentleman, because there are several risks at his age, and it would be better to treat or check whether he has any of the problems. And the other important thing here is that in addition to automated help, doctors can also share the work. For example, this is very important in remote areas where it's not economically feasible to employ a full-time physician. So what the local government can do is organize telemedicine, so that the local citizens, the patients, are able to, let's say, consult with a physician who may be somewhere far away, and the medical records are available. Sometimes you can have a doctor locally available who examines you, writes up what he thinks about you, and then the diagnosis is done by a more qualified specialist somewhere much farther away, so that you can actually increase the quality of local or remote healthcare with digital tools. And then, of course, transparency. I'm sure that you agree that in the situation where everybody knows that the healthcare or the treatment documentation is widely available on the internet to the patient or his relatives, there is some element of motivation for the doctors to follow the procedures, do everything that is necessary, because they know that if they don't and something goes wrong, there's a quite good audit trail of information afterwards. Transparency also works in the other way for the authorities. So the authorities can check what medicines are being prescribed, what procedures are being carried out, what are the outcomes of these procedures. Does one hospital have better outcomes than the other one? And if it is so, what are the reasons? Can we change it? Can we try to work with the hospital that has worse outcomes and try to make them better? Costs. These, by the way, are the new Estonian euro coins, which you'll be able to receive back from any cafeteria here. So that's what we are trying to save every day. When we talk about cost savings in healthcare, the first thing is that, of course, automation helps us to build more efficient processes. In the cycle of a hospital or a sickness case, it usually starts with making an appointment. then going to the hospital, filling a lot of papers, seeing the doctor, being referred to a specialist, having an examination, getting these results back to the original physician, and then they say what they have to do with you, some kind of a treatment process. What e-health enables is to kind of streamline this process and make it more or less instant, so that you're able to book the appointment time online. You don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to call any place. When you go to the hospital, they have the basic data about you. They know your name, your codes, your address. They might know your previous medical appointments, so that the doctor already has much more information, and they don't have to spend a lot of limited visit time to write up simple information like your name or things like this. They don't have to check your insurance because it's already checked. And then they can electronically refer to you to the next physician. And they already know all this information when you get there. So again, there's a lot of time saved in the process. So then you have your examination, your lab tests, or an X-ray, and then these results electronically are sent back to the original physician. So they already have the results before you go back there, and sometimes you don't have to go back at all. If, for example, your blood work is clear, they can just call you and say, congratulations, Taavi, everything is okay, you're not sick, and actually a visit to the doctor is saved. And if you look at the problems in let's say, Western or global healthcare, one of the main problems is doctor's time. There's not enough time to visit and see all the patients. So every visit that is saved is worth a lot of money to the system. And of course, people as well. Because instead of waiting for a week to move all the papers, I know my results next day, and let's say a lot of emotional distress is saved for me and my family, for example. Important for the system always is to utilize the resources to the maximum extent possible. I think we all can look at systems where a new hospital is built, although the previous one is utilized perhaps 60–70% of capacity. And this is very often so because the market participants, or patients in this case, or authorities, they don't know where the unused resources are. They don't have the overview. And putting simple things like online booking and appointment making systems in place can increase the utilization rate of resources greatly. And for a small country or a bigger country, this can mean 100 million euros, €1 billion in some cases. So there's a lot of savings to be made from this increased utilization of resources. Same way, in places where information doesn't move very quickly, I go to one doctor and then I go to the other doctor, and both of them might order the same X-ray or the same blood test. Whereas if they would have the results available, they would not have to. So again, it's a very expensive part of healthcare, very expensive tests, and especially in places where government pays for that, there are very big savings to be had from here. And again, transparency. If the X-ray or the blood test is available online, then the government can ask the hospital, why have you ordered another one? Was it really necessary? Is it okay that this physician has seen 100 patients that day, or maybe they wrote something up? So a lot of data, a lot of statistics comes out of these kind of systems. We will briefly also show some of the success stories, for example, in Estonia e-prescription. Probably one of the most successful national level health projects. Probably the government has already saved the investment that they have made in the system by having more data from how doctors prescribe medicine, and doctors knowing it have probably changed their habits. Empowerment of patients. This is probably the soft part of the e-health, but important nevertheless. So empowerment of patients usually means the first step is that patients have access to their own data. In paper-based hospital or healthcare systems, this is not so easy usually. I have witnessed this myself after the birth of my daughter a couple of years ago. Being in the business, I asked for, can I get the discharge summary for the medical event? And the midwife, who was very friendly towards us before, looked angry and said, okay, why do you need it? Don't trust us, or do you think there was a problem? And I said, no, I just would like to have it. Is that okay? And they said, okay, but why do you need it? And then I had to talk with them for 15 minutes, and then they gave it to me in the end. But there's a lot of friction in the system, and the medical personnel sometimes doesn't trust the patient, and the other way around. So if you take away the barriers in this, it benefits actually both parties. So access to own data, although I didn't understand what was written there, I felt good that I had the paper. Giving the power to schedule appointments to the people, so that you can go online, you can check which specialist is closer to your home, which specialist is available when it's good time for you, and not have this controlled by some mediator, somebody sitting behind the desk and controlling all of it. In countries or regions where this kind of situations are corrupt sometimes, and I think that's quite often the case, it again gives a lot of power back to the citizens. It saves time. E-prescription, scheduling online appointments, avoiding unnecessary appointments. Even in the hospital, when I don't have to fill out the papers about my name, my nationality, my birth date, all of this saves time, so it makes the process much more efficient. And again, also from the patient point of view, transparency. So when I know that I can access the data, I have more trust towards the system, and actually the friction between the physicians and the patients is decreased. Couple of examples of self-services. So we talked about access to personal medical records. Again, something that you can do easily yourself. And this also actually works in the kind of borderline cases where you might go from one doctor to the other one, and the other one might not be connected to the national health record or the electronic medical record. So what you have the ability to print out the data that you need to take to the other doctor, or you can actually show it to the other doctor at their offices. So again, like we were very surprised that in Finland, our, let's say, very well developed, digitally developed neighbor, people still carry around papers to the specialist doctors, which is unheard of in Estonia, really. You can manage your personal data. You're not able to delete medical information, but you're able to update your address, your phone number, your emergency contact. You're able to sign an application to be the organ donor. So a couple of things which sometimes can be important. And of course, this is something that is only beginning, but is actually a big part of future e-health, we believe, is when people have more rights, when people get more rights to access data and do more activities themselves, it's also important that people take more responsibility. And one of the things people can do which helps the system is they can upload or input their own data about what is their weight, what is their blood pressure, blood sugar. In the future, when DNA sequencing becomes more commonplace and cheaper, they can upload their DNA sequence. This again can be used to check for adverse drug reactions. So a lot of things that people themselves can do in the future, and it helps the system to decrease the cost of healthcare as such, and it doesn't cost anything to the system. So the future is kind of going both ways. More rights to the people, but also more power and responsibility. Couple of Estonian examples here, or rather larger points. So one of the success stories, or one of the elements of e-health success, is that our hospital information systems are increasingly modern. Of course, we were very lucky that in the beginning of 90s we didn't have hospital IT systems, and we started from zero. And what's happening right now is that already the larger hospitals are taking up the second generation web-based hospital systems. And this, of course, makes it easier to build national systems as well. I think a globally unique success case is the medical image bank in Estonia. More than 95% of all medical images are stored in a central database, or at least linked to the central database. And after having been at this conference, you might think that this is a kind of more commonplace or the most common Estonian X-ray picture where everybody's using a computer all the time. But actually what happens is that all different kinds of X-rays for and even the more modern MRIs, they are accessible from a central system to the physicians. So again, you go to the your physician, then you go for the examination, you go back to your physician, and they already see the results. Also, this takes away a large burden from the hospitals, because these studies, of course, are massive amounts of data. And it's far more efficient to have a central storage system where everybody bears part of the cost than to have each manage and invest into their own infrastructure. We talked a lot about medical records being online. More than 70% of Estonian people have one or another electronic health-related document in the medical record. I think that when you talk about electronic medical records or national health records, there are many countries, many companies in the world saying that, yes, they have done that. I would very strongly suggest that the Estonian case is the most successful, by far the most successful one. The extent of data that is collected in Estonia, that is available in Estonia, is unrivaled. Of course, we have to also take note that it's a very small country, but still, having reached such national consensus is, I think, quite unique. And then e-prescription, briefly talked about this. It's now it's a big success case. More than 80% of all prescriptions are digital, and is both liked by the patients for its convenience, and also by the government because it saves them money. What is needed to build a national e-health system? In general, what you need is you need to standardize the data. Without standardizing the data, nothing can be done. And this is usually a very tricky part, because depending on the sophistication of current medical systems, it would be quite common that in a country you might have 3 or 4 or even a dozen different medical coding systems in use. So going from that and saying that, okay, guys, now we will just use one, is of course difficult, because nobody wants to reinvent their own system. But this is what you have to do, and then we come to the next point, which is the legal environment. So somebody has to say that, listen guys, we can't go on with this. We have to have one standard. So let's figure out how we do that. Do we form some kind of a stakeholder group who spends a year and standardizes the data, or we go some other way? Of course, legal environment also means access to data. So it's very important to define who and under what conditions has access to the patient data. And I think that here it's important to find some kind of a balance between the person's rights for privacy and the, let's say, systematic benefit of having health data available. System participants' buy-in, also very important and very much connected to first 2 points. If in case a country has very powerful hospitals or medical groups or, for example, insurance companies, it's probably going to be very difficult to do anything meaningful without their help. So it's important to have proper incentives for all market participants. And of course, this is something that is talked about a lot during this conference. E-health can only efficiently operate if it's integrated well with other systems. And if you're not integrated with your citizens register, your drug register, perhaps your rights of vehicle driving register, etc., 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 the benefits of e-health will be limited. And why I'm talking about all of this is that doing e-health systems that really work is very, very difficult. Took out an example here. I myself have been using Google Health for a personal health record for me and my daughter as well. And I thought that, okay, who else can do this if not Google? And then I think it was a month ago when they announced that they are stopping the project. And one of the reasons was that they were not able to link with enough medical data or medical service providers. So they were not able to collect the medical data. And this kind of shows you the difficulty of doing these kind of things. Couple of issues to think about when you go back to your countries and start thinking about e-health projects. The most important thing very often is who pays for it. Studies have been done also here by Estonian researchers about who benefits from e-health. And what the studies show is that the greatest benefit is, let's say, society at large. So the patients, the government, in general, the quality of healthcare goes up. At the same time, a big part of the cost is borne by the healthcare providers, the hospitals. So you see that there's a disconnect. The government says, okay, we need to have e-health because it will deliver benefits. And then very often what they do is they issue regulations forcing the healthcare providers to comply. And then, of course, this creates resentment in the provider's part. So you need to find the balance and proper incentives for everybody to take part in the projects. Important thing is also that when we talk about data access and say that patients have the right to access their own data, that's correct, yes, but patients are not medical specialists. So this is an example of lab result. If you give this to a person even on paper, they won't understand anything. It's the same or even 100 times worse online, because online they might have tens of these and they might have diagnosis or discharge summaries written half in Latin language, and you know what they do is they take out a sentence of it and go to Google or Wikipedia, and then they have a heart attack because they don't understand what's wrong with them. So it's very important to think about how to present the data to the patients in a context so that it doesn't have adverse effects. And the third thing to think about is, which is tricky in many countries, is how to reasonably control data access. In many countries, only the patient can give the right for physicians to see the data. And this can be quite cumbersome. In some countries, you still need to sign a paper so that when you go to the other doctor, that he can log into the first doctor's database and see the data. This to us seems unreasonable. So you need to build a system where data is accessible, but the patient has some degree of control who can access it, and of course there needs to be auditability, and you can always trace who has seen what. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Taavi, for showing us that it. So thank you for inspiring confidence and showing that it actually cannot be done. Thank you. So going on, let's say now to the kind of hard values in the society. Talking about the governments, talking about safety. Let me get my... First, access. I think the cornerstone of the success behind e-governance is the back-end integration. For example, when I log on to the government portal, it will ask me, who are you today? Are you a citizen, or are you representative of a company? Are you representative of a government organization? And this is all tied to my ID card. So I don't have to say, okay, log into all different environments, but the connections are made already in the background. So that makes my life so much more easier. I can have different roles, the same with the e-school example. In the same system, I can be a parent, I can be a teacher. Okay, I cannot be a child and a teacher at the same time. Well, you can be you can even be a teacher in multiple schools. Now to the real, let's say, hard e-government side. This is statistics from the Estonian police. We launched we call it, of course, e-police. We launched the e-police system in 2004. And it was actually a very simple thing. Now, all in all, there was no rocket science. There were no cameras doing facial recognition and then sending some kind of something somewhere. What we did, we put data access and computer terminals in police cars. And police cars, real time, now have access, I think, to 14 or 15 different registers. And because of the same backend integration that I showed you on the previous slide, this means that when they put my name, they will get all the different 360-degree view about me from all the different registers. And what it actually means. Now, one example. Now this is, as you can see, our amount of police officers has been declining. At the same time, wanted objects found per month, meaning, for example, a stolen car, has gone up rapidly since we introduced it. And the way that it works, I will bring you an example from real life. A couple of years ago, a man receives a call in the middle of the night, 60 years old, at 3 o'clock in the night, and this police calling. And they're asking him, but listen, where is your car? He says, oh, it's in front of my house. Go and check. So he goes to the window, looks outside, the car is gone. Okay, what happened? So the police were driving, and they saw the car, they saw the plate number, they put it in the system, and it showed that this car is owned by a 60-year-old guy. But it is driven by two 18-year-olds. So either they have taken their grandfather's car for a ride, or they have stolen it. So they said, okay, let's check. And it was stolen. So the stolen car was actually found before it was reported that it was stolen. Very simple. I mean, once again, very simple thing. You just put the computer terminal, you put the GPRS data connection or 3G data connection, and suddenly the police force has all the information on their fingertips. The same, because they have online real-time connection with the Interpol databases, weapon registries, what have you. Once again, it's very simple. It's about just providing the access to the backend, and the access is the X road, basically. That's how they access all the different databases, and that's how they make the connections about the same person. Now, another example. There's Map Estonia, and this is taken from a person who used to work in the police, so he got the access to his own data. All the red dots show the places where his number was checked during 1 year. Meaning that he was driving somewhere along the road, and then somebody input his plate number into the system. I think it was a total of 137 times during 1 year. He used to drive a lot, of course, as well. So what does it actually mean? His background was checked 135 times every year. He was stopped only 2 times. One, when he made a wrong turn, so okay, rightful stop, get the penalty. And the other one, he was stopped on the 14th of June at 2 o'clock in the morning. Why was he stopped on the 14th of June? Because his birthday is on the 13th. So the police officer made an educated guess that maybe he had a drink. Let's just check it. Yeah. No, but as he's a teetotaler, so he didn't do it. But now the point here, you are constantly under the radar of a police force. And for example, if you have done, I used to think that it's horrible. I really used to think that it's horrible. It's a big brother watching me all the time, and I hate it. And then when I got my first child, I flipped like this. Because now I know that, for example, drunk drivers, and drunk driving is the worst offense that you should do. Okay, speeding every once in a while, but drunk driving is really the worst offense. And our police has taken a very simple principle that if you are caught driving drunk, then you are basically stopped every time. They stop you, and they take their time. They check your licenses, they check your spare tire, your medicine cabinet. So every time you accidentally meet the police, you lose 20 minutes of your life. And it gets to you. So you will really start thinking the next time before you have a drink, before you go and actually drive. So it's more about prevention. So if you have already done something bad, the police will harass you. If you have a clean record, you keep driving. So once again, very simple things. And as a citizen, I am happy that the big brother is watching me. I'm really happy. It keeps me myself more disciplined, and I can feel much safer when my child is going to school. and crossing the street. Trust and transparency. Now, coming back to Big Brother. So, in Estonia, the policy of data access is a bit maybe different than in some other countries. In our case, the policy is simple. The data is open, so many people can look at it, let's say my personal data. But if somebody would use it for the wrong objectives, that person gets punished. The other way would be that, okay, you keep all the data closed and you really limit the access to very specific people in very specific cases. One example, the same way from the police. There used to be a case where a policeman thought that his wife had a lover. And so, of course, he went inside and started doing some personal background checks on that person, on the potential lover. So the potential lover, he went online. And when you go online to the government portal, you will get this kind of a list. Meaning when, what, and who has checked your data. So there's a full log on who has been checking my data through the X-Road. And I can say in my case here, it's been mostly the Notarius, and one time the police. No, notary, but when I go buy an apartment or represent a company, then the notary makes an electronic check on my background. And that guy went online and he saw that the police has really been checking him out. Lots of different requests, and he was not aware that he's in breach of something. So he sent an official letter to the police that am I being accused of something? And why have you been checking me so much? The police replied, okay, no, you're not accused. So they traced the request to that specific person. They figured out that he was accessing the data for the wrong reason, and he was severely penalized. So our policy is that, okay, let's rather keep the data open, but let's keep the data protection really tough. And also giving the people the chance to actually see who is looking at their data. Of course, I mean, if a secret police is looking at you, you will not see it here. Every system has a backdoor. At least that's what they say. Another interesting example is public sector spending. So this is an actual report from the web where you can see, I have taken here name of a company, and I get a report of which government institutions have been buying services or products from this company. So I actually get the spending of the treasury online. Where is the treasury spending our money? Okay, you get all kinds of government procurement, who are they spending, how much, and plus you get all the salaries, etc. In Finland, they have taken it even to more extreme. I mean, you can get the salary of a person with an SMS. So if you know the name of a person, where he lives, you can get the salary. I think that's too extreme. But this one, once again, it's a good method of social control. And I am, as a citizen, I'm happy that the corruption is kept in check. Another example of public document register. This is yesterday evening, I took a screenshot from the document register of the city of Tartu. And there's a regulation that all the incoming and outgoing correspondence has to be logged, and the log has to be available on the web. So I can always go and see that who is communicating, what is being communicated, has my own correspondence been received, etc. Also, it's a good measure of control. Not too many people look at it, but sometimes they do. And for example, the journalists love it. They look at it all the time, and who's been writing to the government, or who has the government been writing to, and maybe there's something interesting and beefy behind it. Salaries, all the civil servant salaries. Once again, this is an actual screenshot from 2010, city of Tartu, what was it called, city government. And we can see here that the mayor had a total of 622,000 Estonian crowns salary per year, which is roughly 40-something thousand euros per year. It's good, transparent, and if this data is available, and there's a politician living next to you who has not declared that he has a business or shares in anything, but suddenly starts building $1 million house with a salary of $40,000, you can ask the right question, but where is the money coming from? Once again, we have chosen to go like this. I mean, there might be many issues and let's say, objections raised on the basis of personal privacy. But in our case, we have chosen to do so. Internet voting, once again, how do you, as the shareholders of a country, how do you elect the management? I think there's a full session on this, I think, tomorrow. So very welcome to attend. But the important part for us is that on the last, these are different. We had local elections, parliament, European Parliament, local, and the last parliament elections. It has been steadily rising, and it's a good trend. It's a good trend. It gives more people the possibility to participate, and makes it also, of course, cheaper for the government. There's a myth that the internet voting is only for the very young people. Now here, it goes top to bottom. Top one is over 55, 45 to 55, 35 to 45, 25 to 34, under 25. As you can see, the number, the proportion of people over 45 has been growing steadily. So it's a myth that electronic voting is only for the young Twitter generation. It's not. People from all ages are actually using it. And the elder generation is steadily more and more using it. And that's the actual statistics from the last 5 elections. Now, property and business. If I'm dealing with a government, what kind of services do I get? First, of course, for internet banking. Internet banking, in our case, in the Estonian case, has been the absolute single most powerful driver for e-government. Because everybody, the most important thing, as we are all greedy people, we want to manage our money. And in order to manage our money, we are ready to pay for the internet connection, we are ready to many other things. So usually, internet banking is the first thing that comes online. In our case, roughly for 97% of all transactions are made electronic channels. Personally, I don't remember the last time when I went to the bank. I'm not talking about the everyday transactions and payments and bills. I'm talking about loan contracts, things like this. I don't want to go to the bank. Why should I go to the bank? I have my computer, there's a law on electronic signature. I don't want to go to the bank. And once again, for the banks, it makes life so much more easier, makes life so much more cheaper. Doing business. Now, what can be done in 15 minutes? You can walk 1.2 kilometers, you can boil 1.5 eggs, or you can establish a company online here in Estonia. 15 minutes, I have timed it, and this is my personal time. I was sitting at home on a Sunday evening, and I needed to register a company. And it took me literally 15 minutes. From the moment when I opened up or logged in into the one-stop shop for the business register, till the moment when I had done everything and the application was sent. 15 minutes. Choose the name of the company, what is the company about, what are the main points of the articles of association, pay in the capital, done, 15 minutes. Very nice. And I think it inspires entrepreneurship in a country. The more easier you make life for actually establishing a company, the more entrepreneurs you will very likely have. Paying taxes is never a pleasant thing. I mean, giving money away to anybody, never a pleasant thing. But it can be less painful. So if you want to take money from somebody, make it as pleasant as possible. Make the customer experience pleasant as possible. And once again, it takes usually less than 10 minutes, from start to end, to declare taxes and pay the taxes in Estonia. The way that the Estonian tax system works, we are a prepaid nation. So every month we overpay a bit, and then at the end of the year we get a refund. And it's a very good financial incentive for anybody. If you go and declare your taxes online, you will get a refund in 5 to 14 days. If you do it on paper, 3 months. Of course, people want to do it online. And, but the beauty of it is not about that, okay, you go in and then you have an application and you write numbers on it. When I go in, the declaration is already pre-filled, meaning my salary information comes from the tax authority and the social security. If I have bought or sold anything, it comes from there, so it's pre-filled. So the only thing I have to fill in is, let's say, specific revenues. If I've been buying or selling some kind of shares, or if I have some kind of income from a foreign country, okay, these I have to put in myself. The rest comes pre-filled, and I just say accept, 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 thank you very much, done. And this is the result. So 92% last year we had submitted. Land auctions. The government has lots of land, selling it every month. There are multiple auctions, and they just decided to make it all public. So they put up the lands. You go on the website, you can see the details for every plot, what it is. Now here's this specific plot. It's in a pretty nice location, 50,000 euros. When is the auction starting? There are electronic auctions the same way. Makes it very easy. Now, when you're buying property, you really want to know what is the background of that property. What are the restrictions? Let's see, if I buy a plot, what are the restrictions on that plot? How much can I build? Where can I build? Are there any kind of power lines, what have you? And this is once again a screenshot of a plot, and I can see that this is the electricity line running here. This is the gas line running here. These are the protection zones around them. So, although the plot is beside the river, building on it will actually be very difficult. So I would think multiple times before I actually go and buy it. So what they have done, they have concentrated. There's one map, one central map database in the country, and all the participants, the gas companies, the electricity companies, everybody is putting their data on this map. So that I will have, once again, 360-degree view of the land, of a property. Once again, an example, a question about is it good or not. If for any plot of land, I will get a full view. What is the composition? How big is it? Changes? Who is the owner? Who have been the owners? How has it been moving? Was it some kind of notary agreement? What are the mortgages on it, etc. So any plot of land I want to see, I will get the full information about this. Now some say, once again, it's an invasion of privacy, but you can go and look up who has what plots. And I can also go and look up who owns what plots, so the other way around. But I think it provides for good transparency, so that if you're buying a property, then you will know what's the situation of a property. Is it mortgaged? Who is it owned by, etc. And e-notary, notaries used to be a pain in the backside. To get a notary appointment, it took, 3-4 weeks, and. Now, the new e-notary system, basically it has done so much to automate them. I go there usually, when I had to go to a notary, and I was, for example, doing something regarding a company, I had to go to a business register, get the data from there, bring my passport, this and that. Now the only thing I bring my ID card, and they get all the other information that they need to know about me, about my rights, my properties, what have you, from the government databases. I go in there, we have the pre-filled templates already. I do it, they send the information back, saves so much time. And finally, convenience. The ID card that I have is my bus ticket, it's my driver's license, it's my health insurance card, it's even my loyalty card in many cases. So in many cases, the shops, they don't want to issue a separate loyalty card for me. They just say that, okay, put your ID card in here, and that will be a loyalty card from now on. And my mobile is my ID card. I don't know if yesterday, I think there was already a session about the mobile ID. In many cases, for example, now I will go and travel somewhere. I need to go to an internet cafe. I will need to go and, say, for example, sign a document online, and it doesn't have a card reader, so what do? I cannot use my ID card. With my mobile ID, I don't need it. And my mobile, the same way as my wallet, I can do full, say, the same security level of transactions that I do with my ID card from the internet bank, I can do from my mobile phone with my mobile signature. It's in my wallet the same way. And of course, it's my parking meter. So convenience drives the people to do things. And of course, what's happening at home? All the promotion of different tourist sites here. This is the English version. We have the same way. We have an Estonian version, which is targeted at the Estonian population itself. All the different hostels, down to the people who will rent you one bedroom during the summertime in their own house, just to drive the internal tourism and do the regional policy. If you are looking to have a night out, I can say that pretty much any ticket that you would need, you can buy them from one place. There are a couple of gentlemen standing there in the back from Piletilevi. One of them is waving right now. You can talk to them if you want to explore the nightlife, be it opera, be it a rock concert. I'm sure that they can help you. And they will give you the ticket right here and right now. Once again, not a big deal, just makes life a bit more comfortable. And sometimes e-government or anything is bad. I can go and watch elephants in the zoo online instead of taking my child there. So every once in a while we tend to overdo things. And this is the final picture from me. This is I think it's called the semantic picture of the Estonian e-government. So these are all the different systems and all the different interconnections with them. I don't know who took the time to do it, but it looks very nice from far away. So with that, I would like to thank you, and if there are any questions, I think we still have some time. Thank you. And also, any questions to Taavi or Meeri? Sild, welcome, Meeri, if you could also join us here. We can just sit down and make ourselves comfortable. Let's see, do we have Taavi Inaste here as well for the health? No, we don't, so let's call him. But yes, any questions? Very welcome.
Suppose one day you lose your mobile phone, and in which you have some powerful functions. So how can you do? Or if I picked that mobile phone which belongs to you, can I also use it to get the money from your e-wallet?
No, you cannot. And it's very simple. The whole, if you lose a bank card, for example, and you cannot, somebody else cannot get the money out from the ATM because you need to know your pins. So the same way, it has two levels of pins inside. One is for just access, and the other is for signing. So
you have the pink.
Yes, exactly. So it's what if I lose my mobile? It's the same as what if I lose my own ID card? What if I lose my passport? I just report it right away to the authorities and say that close it. And anyway, if the person would want to use it, they cannot.
Just now you also introduced the system for showing the land if someone wants to buy. But most people are interested about buying house, estate.
Mm-hmm.
So does Estonia also provide such a system for the customer to check the house in advance?
Yes, the same way, but of course, I mean, the real estate brokerages or exchanges, they are private. I mean, there are multiple of them where pretty much you can find any house or flat on sale, but the same due diligence that I showed about the plot, you can do on the house. So you can go to the construction register and you can get all the necessary data about it. When was it built, how was it built, who was the project manager, etc. So you can do the due diligence on that, let's say, for example, house as well. So it's maybe not that seller-friendly, but it's very buyer-friendly system.
Another question goes to the e-health. Because so far, understanding the e-health is running on the data management and the data sharing. I'm curious about whether the e-health also provide some home health care that people can check their body condition remotely or see the doctor remotely, if the e-health has such a function so far.
There are. This one is on. Yeah. Okay. So now it's working. The national system currently does not have that kind of functionality, but it's definitely in the visions of the people who manage it, that you would be able to enter such data and you would be able to integrate such, let's say, telemedicine devices that measure your blood pressure at home. But there are private, let's say, healthcare institutions that offer such services that you are able to connect with your doctor from home. So I think that on the national level it's still, let's say, optimistically 5, realistically maybe a bit more years away.
Now the question goes to the e-school. You talk a lot of functions convenient for parents and students and also for the teacher. I also wondering if your system already have the system helping the teacher to manage and develop their courseware for the teaching.
Unfortunately, with this system, not yet. But there are, well, we can use different learning management systems that are developed in our universities to develop courseware. And it would be my dream if this different system could be united.
So also a question goes to, you mentioned about the trouble student or problem student. And could you please introduce a little bit more about this function, how to trace or control the troublemaker student or problem student, how to, according to their behavior, find the proper way to educate them, to teach them, to encourage them from bad guy become the good guy?
Well, unfortunately, no system will help or teach us how to make a student to become a better. But it makes the work of a teacher or a class teacher easier, because with previous paper-based registry, I really had to go through all subjects to find out where the problems were. Now I just search for keyword problem students, and it points me out all students with either who failed tests or who are very frequently absent from school. And so I get the information in a very fast way, and I can approach the teachers. Not within the system. There should be some well, people-to-people communication as well. And also parents who doubt whether their son or daughter has arrived to school, they can now check through e-school in the middle of the day already and take measures.
Or you can even go to a level, I mean, you can define triggers that, for example, you would like to get an SMS if your child misses a class. Now that's Big Brother, but maybe it helps. Yes, please.
I just wanted to comment that in city of Tartu, which is second largest city in Estonia, we have this SMS notification working already. So when the student is absent from the first class, teacher can send parents an SMS, and the student will be present, for example, in the third class already.
Yes, please. Okay, yeah.
I'm from Trub Baltic. Thank you very much for a very informative and detailed introduction. And I have a question regarding e-voting system. We could see on the slide the age separation by people who voted. And in this regards, I have a question: how the anonymous is protected, and how can we be sure in the results? You see, this is a very tricky question. We could, from one hand, we want it to be anonymous, and from another hand, we want to be sure that people who voted, their votes went to the candidate they wanted. And what regulation and how it's created, what is the structure, and what are guarantees of this e-voting system? Thanks.
I will give a short answer, short and simplistic answer. The long answer will be, I think, on the session tomorrow. There will be a full session on the e-voting. But the short answer is that the whole Estonian digital signature works in a way that you don't actually sign the document, but you sign the envelope around that document. So, for example, during the election process, you put your vote in the envelope, you sign the envelope, and then once it goes to the system, the envelope and the vote are separated. So your digital identity goes away from the vote when it actually gets into the database. Don't ask me exactly how they do it, but that's the kind of general picture of how they do it. And the question of, can you go into the database and change the names and change the votes? Yes, theoretically, of course you can. Of course you can. But in our case, it is audited before the elections, after the elections, during the elections, etc. And you have to be able to trust somebody, at least in the country. Theoretically, I agree that yes, somebody could log into the database and could change the votes. In practice, I mean, the same can happen with any election. You can just change ballots for each other. So there is no, 100% guarantee that this will never happen and this could never happen. But I think that's the same question about any kind of security. You can build all the firewalls you want, but then you will have a stupid guy who will put all the documents on a flash stick and leave it on the seat of a bus. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question about e-school. I'm also a parent, and I'm sometimes disturbed by the number of papers I get to follow up my daughter's work at school. Now, have you seen any impact on the use of paper-based communication of your e-school system? You mentioned about the report in one school, but for instance, children have their agendas and you have communications about school trips and all kinds of stuff. And you might expect that the e-school could also be used to become like, let's say, a green school where we have less paper-based communication and less paper use.
Mm-hmm. Yes, through e-school you can send messages to all parents. So of course it helps. Whether to guarantee that all parents really log in and have a look at the messages, that's another thing. So that is something we should encourage our parents to do. But certainly it helps to go paperless. But from my own practice, we in our school, for example, use parent-teachers lists to exchange information, so we do not print papers and send them home.
I have one more question about e-school. Everybody says about problem students, but what about talented students? Can you track, or can somebody track talented students in the system and propose them additional educations, additional courses, and it's interesting from the point of view of university?
There is not a button yet, talented students in e-school. It's a very, very good idea. But within e-school, when I assign tasks, and when I, for example, mark my students, there is a possibility to add a comment with additional tasks. It is possible to attach a file, for example, with a worksheet, or post a link what the student should explore in a more detail. So it is possible to approach each student in an individual way.
And what about possibility of collective projects and collective activities for students in the system?
That's not possible. It is still a register for marks and progress. So we hope it will develop the school system, because, as I said previously, it would be very nice if it were connected with some kind of learning management system to make it one whole, not to log into different places. So, but I think it might happen pretty fast, because I know they are working on these ideas.
Thank you.
Okay.
In my country, that's Belgium, we use the e-ID for a number of e-government applications, tax filing, for instance, e-police. But banks use another system to give their clients access to the data. You have to use the bank card. I mean, prior to the use of the ID in Estonia, that was probably the same thing here. Did the government impose the e-ID use to the banks?
quite on the opposite, I would say. The banks want to use it. Because still, I mean, the banks still have the authentication systems in place that they had, before the ID. Not all the clients have been pushed to use the ID. But the banks want to push their clients so that they can finally get rid of their token systems, so to say. And it's been a strategic decision in Estonia from day one that there will be one ID card. In many countries there is one ID card for civil servants and one ID card for military and then one for the private sector, and was the same with the digital signatures and certificates and so on. We said, but okay, let's have one central place, save time, save money, and then everybody will actually use it. Because if you have an ID card that you can only use in government, but not in the private sector, the motivation to have it and to use it on a daily basis is much smaller.
Yes, the problem is that the applications we use them for, the ID, I mean, are much more rarely used. I mean, it's a very powerful trigger if you can have banks use the same system because they use them on a daily basis.
Exactly, and the same way, for example, the login to the e-school is done with the ID card, the banking, the telecom systems, what have you.
Also the e-health.
Also the e-health, exactly, yeah. So it's kind of about creating a critical mass of the different services, and then people will feel the actual need to start using it. And I think that's what the government needs to do in the beginning, to create a critical mass, and then the snowball will start rolling itself.
I have also a question for about school matters. Do government officials or people responsible for eGov applications, for instance, police, e-health, tax officials, do they come to schools? I mean, in secondary level, for instance, to tell to the students what applications exist, or does that not apply?
I think you can always call them, but these topics are covered in our civics curriculum. So these topics are discussed in the classes already in Form 9 before they enter to secondary school. So they should be aware of all these opportunities.
Good.
I think quite widely also discussed in the media, all the services.
I have a question regarding mobile ID. Who is the authority providing these services? This is a government-owned organization or a private one?
It is managed by the government, let's say authorized by the government, but the actual, basically it's the same SIM card. The SIM cards are given out by the mobile phone companies. But of course the root certificate, actually the root certificate is also sitting in a private company who gets, and that is tendered every 5 years. But of course the regulation is with the government.
Okay.
So there's a lot of private-public partnership in here and trust in here.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting and wide. I have several questions. First is about how many e-services are provided on national level and how many are provided on local level, I think. The second question is, do you have a centralized system of e-services monitoring? And if you have, how does it work? And the third question is, you have maybe quite a big number of e-services already. How are you thinking of implementing new services now?
Mm-hmm. There is a national central system for managing all the e-services. We call it the very wise name of the management system of the government e-services. Very talented. And the last time I checked from there, I think it was about 3-4 months ago, there were 2,200 something e-services in that system, all in all. 2,226, I think. That was in March. I cannot tell you the division between the say government and local level. That I cannot tell you. But all in all, I mean, these are all the different services provided to all, and it's not only let's say government to citizen. It's also, let's say, intragovernmental, all kinds of information sharing services that run through the X-Road. What are the plans? There are lots of plans. One issue that we have been dealing with in Estonia is that we're a small country and still we have 273 municipalities, I think, something like this, in a country of 45,000. So it's historical, traditional, and one question that we are kind of debating inside is how can we best use IT to reform, we call it kind of governance reform inside the country. So how could we build services that don't no longer run along the borders of the old municipal units? For example, that's one debate. Of course, I mean the whole development in the education system, health system. So there's a lot of discussion going around where we could go next. How much should we go mobile? How much should we go into the whole different, touchpads, iPads, what have you? There's a roadmap in place. I think it's in very many different directions at the same time. I don't know how well that answered your question, but yeah.
Yes, thank you. Can you please describe in general or by area which and whether any solutions, technical or business solutions you have taken over from other countries, or everything is just your invention is in Estonia?
I don't think we have taken over anything, to be frank with you. Definitely we haven't taken over any business systems. The same way with, let's say, core technology frameworks, it's homegrown. And I would say that outside from the, let's say, very standard systems like accounting or maybe HR management, everything is pretty much tailor-made and by government procurement. And that has been the strategy of a country, that we would rather build our own than buy something ready-made, because usually what is good for Finland, for example, or for Sweden or for US might not necessarily work here. And generally the cost of building an average system in Estonia has been way, way smaller than even with any of our neighbors. For example, even we have made some comparisons with Latvia, and Latvia is 2.5 million, give or take, in population, not much bigger than us. And taking the same government procurements, the same system basically, for example, customs system, that we need to have to live with the rules of the European Union. In the Estonian cases, the price differences have been from 2 to 10 times. So I think it's also about the price. So for some reason we have been able to build the systems here quite efficiently. You never know what's the reason.
So would you suggest that other countries should also do the systems by themselves? Because that discourages reuse and reinventing the wheel to some extent.
Estonian systems have been taken over by some countries. For example, I think one tax system from the Estonian tax authority was taken over by Latvian tax authority. The same X-road concept has been reused by many countries. I'm not saying that reuse is bad, but what I believe in that you cannot just take plug and play. It's e-government systems, yeah.
Sorry, it's also about timing. When we started, there was not so much available.
Yeah, and that as we have been kind of pioneers in the e-government space, so there hasn't been too much, let's say, business systems to take over. Yeah. And also when we're talking about, and I think one important part when rethinking your government process and building e-government systems is that before you decide to change a system, you step one step back, take your existing processes and think what is wrong with this process, what could I do better, and kind of then put them back together again and visit a new process what I want to have, and I tailor my application around it. And that's has been kind of our approach.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do you have 5 standards for launching new e-services or managing the existing ones, so you can guarantee that all e-services are the same level of quality parameters like usability, for example?
When we're talking about the, for example, about the publishing of services in the central government portal, yes, they go through a screening the same way. there are guidelines which are published by the central authorities about, let's say, how usability should be done and say, interaction and security and so on. So the guidelines are in place, but the whole Estonian system of building e-services is so decentralized. We try to encourage decentralization so that people would actually sit in their corner and innovate. So not to push everything through a central process. So there are guidelines, there are strict protocols, and for example, before you put a service into government portal, it has to go through an audit. But no, there is no central government quality control for each and all service end to end. So we want to trust the agencies who are actually building them as much as possible.
First of all, let me congratulate you for a wonderful and a remarkable achievement in Estonia.
Thank you.
And I have two questions. Have you have any business model to measure the uptake of electronic services against the traditional way? And my second question about the return on investment. Do you try to measure how much X or Y, Z services impacted financially and return revenue for the government? And how would that pay off in order to develop more and more services through the e-government portal?
Mm-hmm. I can start from the second one. We have tried. We have tried many times. But as Taavi also said about the health services, the soft side is so important. For example, if we take the same very simple example of the tax declaration. Let's say hypothetically there are 500,000 tax declarations. If people would rather spend 1 day in it, that's how much? That's 0.5%. No, yeah, 1 day is 0.5% of the year, which is basically 0.5% of GDP. And now if they can do it in 10 minutes, so that at least in theory should be plus 0.5% of the GDP every year. In theory, will it actually work like this? No, it's more art than science, I would say.
You lose some consultant revenue.
Exactly, yeah. I think and consultants will not have as much revenue. I agree with Taavi. The uptake, there are statistics, of course, available about each and every service, how much is used, etc. How well the government authority is actually using it, I think it depends on the management quality of that government authority. How much are they actually, using that statistics and incorporating this in their internal planning? So there is no kind of central standards that this is how you should measure things and this how you should incorporate into a strategy, etc.
The point here is, once you develop or implement a service, that should be reflected into the reality. For example, any government authority has to reduce the front offices or counters in order to eliminate the cost or the back-end expenses by government. And this will reduce a lot of budget for the X authority or Y authority. So more services you are developing, more cost saving for the government. Mm-hmm. And this is the point. Which I understand here, there is no centralized e-government authority regulate all these things.
There is central e-government authority, but that authority is more about setting standards and not doing all the work. So we believe in decentralization, we believe in giving responsibility and authority to the players in the system. So we don't believe that there should be a massive central authority who is doing everything. And that's just the way that we have decided.
So they're just setting policies and standards and governance later on.
Yes, and also they are handling let's say, the central X-road of the data exchange, and they're also handling the document management exchange. So they're kind of handling the very central technical systems, plus they're setting the policies for everybody else.
I suppose policy settings plus infrastructure management, you say?
Yes, yes. And but what comes to the cost cutting, and we do it differently. We just say that, for example, when we had the tough economic crisis a couple of years ago, which, every ministry was just supposed to cut 8%, and then go figure how you can do it best. Okay, I think we have run out of time now. I would like to thank you all for spending 2 hours of your life listening to us. And I hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference. I would like to thank also Meeri and Taavi. Thank you so much.